Hi, everyone. I hope you've been having a wonderful day at Sala. It's been such a pleasure to have every one of you. Welcome to our final celebrity panel for today, in which Kabir Khan, an acclaimed filmmaker in Bollywood, is in conversation with Tipu Purkayastha. Tipu is a Bay Area-based HR professional who grew up in Calcutta. He is the board chair for the South Bay Musical Theatre in his current hometown of Saratoga. He hosts interviews with film writers and sports personalities and has recently started a sports podcast called Khel Khel Mein. Tipu is delighted to be back as a moderator for the 5th time at Sala. And with that, let's welcome our panelists on stage. Kabir Khan, Tipu Purkayastha.
Thank you. It's scary when they call it a celebrity panel and then they introduce me. So, I'm not sure if I should introduce Kabir, but I feel that if you are here, you know who Kabir Khan is. Please.
Thank you.
Give
Lovely
him a
being
big
here.
hand.
Thank you so much.
So, before I begin, a little bit of the format, some of the house rules, etc. Format, I'm going to ask him questions, of course. I'll try to keep my questions as short as possible so that you hear him and you can hear his. Oh, we have already bought the house down.
Nice, actually. You got the sun. Yeah, it's nice. Leave it.
Well, I was kind of hoping that my brightness would be enough, but oh. Yeah, it's, the glare comes into my eyes, so yeah. Okay. So I'll keep the questions to his movies, of course, but a little bit of the area outside of the movies into popular culture, to kind of the society and things. I promise not to make it boring. There'll be a Q&A after this. I'll try to keep about 45 minutes of questions, 15 minutes of Q&A. And as always, for Q&A, limit the Q&A to questions. One, about his movies. I think there's a collective knowledge in this hall, which is way more than mine. And I think you'll have many interesting questions to ask about Kabir's movies, the music, and a lot of the things that are there which make his movies very popular. So let's focus on those things. So with that, I have made extensive notes.
Whoa.
So I feel like I'm taking an exam here.
I feel like I'm taking an exam.
As always, the first thing is trying to figure out my handwriting. So the last movie of yours that I saw, Chandu Champion, starts with, and I should also say, a lot of Kabir's movies are available on Netflix or on Prime Video, except Phantom for some strange reason, but which was there on our local library. So in Chandu Champion, the movie starts with Karthik Aaryan in the title role as a Paralympian who at the start of the movie is at a police station and he has a complicated reason for being at the police station. I won't get into that. Watch the movie. And then the movie goes into a flashback. So I want to do a flashback here. This is a long seg. I want to do a flashback here and go back to your first forays into movies, and you were mentioning yesterday about documentary films. Yeah. And I was wondering if you could talk to me a little bit about those early days, I mean, including how you got into this industry and got into this art form.
Well, I mean, if you really go back to how I got into films, it's through my master's in my film school. Kiran is also here. We're both from the same film school, which is Jamia in New Delhi. And what brought me to films was actually a combination of a love of photography, which came through a love of mountaineering. I used to do a lot of mountaineering and trekking in my when I was in Delhi University, and also a little bit of theatre that I did. And of course, a chance that my elder sister was wanting to go to film school, and I said, okay, why don't you get a form for me too? And that's how it all started. Fortunately, we both got through, otherwise she would have killed me. But it truly begins actually with documentaries post my masters, and I'd like to mention Saeed Naqvi here, because I was really lucky. I think I was privileged to have been able to attach myself to him very early on in my career. And Saeed, so I call him Saeed Bhai, and Saeed Bhai at that point in time was obsessed with reporting international news through an Indian perspective, because that is the time when our channels are not traveling, and you know, all the international news we got was through the sort of BBC and CNNs. And he said, that's not really the story that's relevant to us. We need to go and find the story that's relevant to us as Indians. And all I could see in that was that we had to travel a lot. So I just latched on to him. I said, I'll shoot for you, I'll edit for you, I'll do whatever it takes. And in the course of the next 4 years to 5 years, you know, I traveled to more than about 80 countries with him. And it really shaped me as an individual. It made me realize, you know, what he was talking about, that there's always, you know, even news it's a perspective of someone. It's not gospel, and you need to be able to question that. And if you see my first film, my second film, you know, Kabul Express, which is basically about the Taliban in Afghanistan after the two journalists in Afghanistan post the Taliban collapse, or New York, which is about the post 9/11 illegal detentions that took place here. They were all basically questioning the news that we were otherwise consuming through the Western media. So that has been a very formative period for me. And then, you know, subsequently I feel that training is something that has been with me through all my films.
So if I could just stay on a little bit longer on Delhi, and you and I were having this very interesting conversation yesterday about Delhi, how influential it has been, Delhi of that time, in what is today modern Bollywood. Modern is, of course, a matter of relativity, but you talked about how people like you and people around you, mostly from Delhi University, have moved on to Bombay and have made films and become, I don't know if I should call it a movement, maybe it's not, but there are people like you who have gone there and made these movies. And I do not know if that's something that you did happen consciously, or it just happened that you all there at the same time.
I wouldn't call it a movement, but it is something that happened, you know, around the time. And these are all people, we sort of all work together in Delhi. These are, you know, people from the Delhi University around the same time as me. And yeah, I was having this conversation when I actually started listing out the names. I said, oh, that's a lot of people. Within a course of about 2-3 years, the number of, and I think this is a significant point to make, especially in this whole debate of nepotism that is happening around Bollywood. You know, when it comes to directors, you know, let me count. There's apart from me, there was Imtiaz Ali, there was Anurag Kashyap, there's Anurag Basu, there's Shudit Sarkar, Dibakar Banerjee, Jaideep Sani. These are all directors who literally we moved within a few months of each other coming to Bombay. So there's a huge influx of directors from and writers from Delhi to Bombay. And I think what was different was, it was just a different way of looking at things. It was a different language that people were hearing in the dialogues. It was just the different portrayals of characters. And I think that's what then made most of these, you know, names that I've mentioned, they're all gone on to become successful directors. So yeah, it's not a movement, but it was a huge number of people moving at that point of time from Delhi University to Bombay.
And I love the thing you said about the language. And you know, when you watch movies like Khosla Ka Ghosla or Oye Lucky Lucky Oye, and there's a certain idiom that they're speaking in. And in fact, Kiran, I'll also say even Dhobi Ghat has a little bit of that. I mean, it's a way of speaking, a modern way of speaking. The English thing started becoming more popular. Also around the same time, I think we moved away from the single theater, the single screen theaters to multiplexes, and then streaming started coming in. All of these things are happening around the same time. Do you think the kind of movies that get consumed today, compared to, let's say, the late 90s, and I moved out of India in the late in the year 2000. So for us, a lot of the movies of late 90s was a certain kind of movies with a certain kind of songs. So much of it has changed. You were very active at that period. I'm talking from the early aughts onwards to now, and you're very active in that period. And some of the people that you just mentioned. How do you see that, the kind of films being made, how do you see that having changed in that period? Do you think the movies that were popular when you make your first movie, Kabul Express, is that the kind of movies that are there today when, say, Chandu Champion comes in or whatever your next movie is?
So actually, Kabul Express, I had a tough time putting together because that was still, like you're saying, at one point these films were being described as multiplex movies. But when I was trying to make Kabul Express, there was only one multiplex in the whole of Bombay. And it wasn't the classic, 6 songs and a love story format. It was, in a certain sense, autobiographical. It was a story of what happened with me and my friend Rajan in Afghanistan when we were making documentaries there. It was, but at that point in time, there was this whole new, corporates had started coming in with, they were all public limited companies coming in wanting to fund films. And we thought that, this is a great new era opening up. We'll get opportunities to make different kind of films. But it wasn't easy. I was going to all these, so-called new corporates, and I got all kinds of gyan from them. I remember the one that I'll never forget is I went to this, I won't take names, but there was this big corporate that had opened, which is supposed to championing sort of different cinema, and I won't make this up, right? It's not like a stand-up act I'm doing. This is verbatim. And I met them and I said, I want to make this film. Can I narrate it to you? And they said, okay, so actually Monday to Friday, we basically, so first he said, no, he said, tell me your proposal. I didn't know what that is. I thought, I proposed to make a film. So he said, no, you didn't understand, what's your budget? What's your recovery plan from the 14 different distribution territories? I was saying, if I'm supposed to know all this, then what's your job? So I said, I don't know about this, but you could probably hear the story and then we can discuss this. So he said, no, Monday to Friday we discuss proposals. Saturday we can hear the script. So I said, okay, I'll come back on a Saturday. I come back on a Saturday and I narrate the script to him, and he liked it. He said, there are 2 kinds of films. There's a pre-Friday film and there's a post-Friday film. So I said, okay, so what's the difference? He said, pre-Friday films is, when you have a certain budget and then basically you recover all the costs because you do pre-sales, and by the time your film comes out on Friday, you're safe, you've recovered your money. And post-Friday film is where you're not able to do that, and the film has to build up on its own steam and recover money. I said, okay. He says, your film is a post-Friday film. So I said, okay, so let's make a post-Friday film. He said, no, our company charter is to make only pre-Friday films. So then he offered me solutions. He said, but you can become a pre-Friday film. I said, how? He said, get Arjun Rampal. I said, oh, okay. I couldn't even get Arjun Rampal's manager's number, let alone Arjun Rampal. So, which I told Arjun years later. But yeah, so this is the kind of gyan I was getting, and the only place that I would not go to is, or I didn't go to, one, because it was a mythical place and it has high walls and you don't enter that place without permission, is Yash Raj Films. Because conventional wisdom said that Yash Raj is not going to make a film like this. After about a year of this, I get a call from Yash Raj Films. Unknown to me, my script had reached them through some other friend, and I get a call from this lady who says, Aditya Chopra from Yash Raj Films wants to speak to you. And I said, that's like sure, I'm the king of England. Because firstly, nobody knew whether Aditya Chopra even exists. And the joke in Yash Raj is that he doesn't really exist, he's just created by Yash Chopra to scare people. So, and I'm thinking somebody's pulling a fast one on me, and my wife, Minnie, was an MTV VJ. There used to be a very popular show on MTV called MTV Bakra. So I said, ye bakra kar rahe mere upar. They all know my struggle. This is going to be a bakra. So I said, yeah. But something was serious about that lady's, the way she was talking to me. I said, okay, give me the time and date. And I promise you, as I was going to Yash Raj, I thought, before I can enter the gate, Cyrus Brocha will jump out of a bush and say Bakra. There was no brocha. The gates opened. I went in, and the lady said, yeah, there's Aditya Chopra is waiting for you. And I opened the door and I still remember the visual. Adi was standing next to the window. He was cleaning his reading glasses with his shirt, and he just turned around and said, Kabir, I've read your script. Really moves well. When can we start? And that's how it happened. So. So he did sort of, start bringing in, and that's the point in time when even in Yashraj, you see, with me, there was Shimit Amin who came in, Habib Faisal who came in later. These are all people who were bringing in a different voice.
Yeah. So, talking about the different voice, no pun intended there, but when you look at something like Kabul Express, it's not obviously not a very conventional Hindi movie. It's not a YRF romantics movie. It doesn't have that kind of songs or that kind of conventional structure. In the movies subsequent to that, one of the things that you do really well are the songs. You have a great visual sense of how to structure the songs, where to place the songs, the scenes in which the songs come in. And then, of course, you have some great collaborators, including Kausar Munir, who's been a frequent visitor here at Sala. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your songs. And that's a broad topic, obviously, but you have some favorites. You mentioned some of them. Generally, how do you film songs?
Using songs in my films has been my greatest struggle and my greatest learning. I was a documentary filmmaker. I came into making films. I had no idea how does this character start singing. Like, what in the world will make them sing? So Kabul Express, they don't sing because they've been kidnapped by the Taliban. You're not going to be singing there. Then is New York, and he's in illegal detention. He's not going to sing there. So New York has a great album, my first collaboration with Preetham. But actually, if you remember, there's no lip sync song in New York.
Yeah, even in the college that.
Even Hai Junoon, which went on, which was sung by KK, my friend, and became a huge success, is not lip sync. And then came Tiger, right? Tiger's like after the success of New York, Adi said to me, you seem to have a commercial flair with all this documentary background talk that you do. You seem to have a flair for telling story in a commercial way, because New York was surprisingly a huge commercial success. So he said, I feel you should do like a superstar film because it has a completely different dynamic. I said, okay. I took it on and started creating what has now become the Spy verse. But I said, now how do I make this guy sing? So it was Ekta Tiger for me was a huge struggle. Until date, when I look back at Ekta Tiger and see the songs, I cringe and I look away. I said, dude, this guy really didn't need to sing. But you can't do a Salman Khan film without songs. But all this while, I was learning, and when I was writing the screenplay of Bajrangi Bhaijaan, 6 songs just came organically into the screenplay, and 2 of them lip sync. Of course, one of them is a qawwali, so it's like being performed by another person, not the actor. So for me, it was just. And then when I wrote 83, I said, if I make Kapil Dev sing, people will lynch me. So I realized it's basically the story will dictate to you when a song can be used and when it cannot be used. And today's audiences understand that. I think a Bajrangi Bhaijaan needed those songs. And if I'd put a song though having said that, 83 is my biggest album. It's got 8 songs, but they're all, again, background songs. Lehrado, which Kausar has written for me, has become an iconic song today. But they had to be used as background. So yeah, songs for me has been this, I'm still learning. But thanks to my sort of collaborations with Preetham, who I really love and love collaborating with him, I've got some really good songs thanks to him.
Yeah, and this is where I said that Preetham and I went to the same college. Oh, wow. Yeah. This is the second shout out for Presidency College, Calcutta, after Abhijit Banerjee in the afternoon. So, you mentioned Kausar, and one of the things Kausar was mentioning in her interview last year with Anjali Arundekar, who's actually here tomorrow doing a couple more sessions, was how she said that, and she was responding to an audience question, that she's entirely guided by the script and the director, which is kind of something what you are saying. So when you look at some of the other films you have made, and do you feel that music in Hindi movies, is it more going towards a more of an instrumental background score versus songs, which seem to have a life of its own, seem to be a completely different thing than the movie itself? It's like you're two separate organisms.
No, I think what is happening is all kinds of films are being made and everybody's using music the way they want to use music. I think we still have the conventional, films being made which have, 6 songs, love songs, everything, and they're being appreciated. And at the same time, we have songs, we have films which don't necessarily have lip sync songs, but are being really appreciated. I mean, Lapata Ladies has such a beautiful soundtrack, beautiful song. It's not lip sync, but it's being appreciated. So I think all kinds of different storytelling is today being accepted in our industry.
So talking of different storytellings, one of the things which I noticed with your movies also is you go into places and make films about subjects that become suddenly very relevant later on. And you know where I'm going with this. So 10 years ago, made Bajrangi Bhaijaan with a message of India-Pakistan friendship, or at least a message of the people of the two countries being able to talk to each other through a device of the Samjhauta Express, and then et cetera, a child gets lost, she gets returned. Even if I go back into, and you just mentioned in New York with the detentions, that's something which is happening today. In fact, a few of our sessions already had questions on that topic. I look at Kabul Express, and you have this whole thing about the Taliban and taking over, the country being taken over again, and which is kind of, I was noticing it when I'm watching the movie, because that Taliban is on the run in that movie. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. And even the question of border, and one of the things which our theme for this event is Thoughts Without Borders, and I see the border being a very important part of your film. And top of my head, I see in Phantom things happen at the border, at the maritime border. Things happen underwater. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to give it too many spoilers. In Kabul Express, they're trying to get from the Afghanistan into Pakistan. So there's a whole border theme that it goes, even in some of your Ek Tha Tiger, some of these movies. I was wondering, what do you feel about this, suddenly some of your themes becoming more relevant today?
So, some of the examples that you've mentioned are actually the physical borders, but I've also spoken a lot, and in fact, for me, when I was writing the script in Bajrangi Bhaijaan, the more important border was the borders within. And the first half of the film, before he goes to Pakistan, is actually about the borders within our own country and society, which is what I wanted to reflect in Bajrangi Bhaijaan. Because I remember when I was writing that, and I put Bajrangi as a working name for that character, and my mother, I was, I think, narrating something to her, and she said, "Why would you use the name Bajrangi?" So I said, "Why not? He's a Hanuman Bhakt. I want him to be called Bajrangi." She says, "No, I remember Babu Bajrangi. In the Gujarat riots, the guy who famously bragged on television that he had killed, hundreds of people." So I said, "Yeah, but how can?" And that got me thinking. And I said, "So are we going to let Bajrangi now be owned by him, or should I then even more attempt to bring Bajrangi back into becoming a name of something that we grew up with?" So for me, I grew up in Delhi, and I remember that every year we used to perform Ram Leela, and the character we all vied to portray was not Lord Ram, it was Hanuman. Yeah, because he got the best entry into the show. He was the most charismatic character, and it was a very simple audition. You had to run from one point to a tree, and whoever could climb the tree the fastest would be Hanuman. And I was always a very good climber, so I would get to play, Hanuman. And I said, this is the Bajrangi I grew up with. And either we now say, okay, that Bajrangi doesn't exist anymore, or we fight for that space. And that's really what inspired me to do Bajrangi, and I got a fabulous ally in Salman because I'd done Tiger with him, which became a huge success. Conventional wisdom, industry wisdom said, make Tiger 2. And I refused. I said, I'm not going to go through this, all boys love playing with toys and blowing up cars and action and guns. I'd done that in Tiger. Now I wanted to move on. And I went to Salman. I said, Salman, you feel so strongly about the politics of this story that I'm writing about. Salman is a living example of the syncretic culture of this country. And I said, but somehow you've never articulated these politics on the platform of which you're a demigod. He's never done a film. So when I narrated it to him, he said, absolutely. And he said, you know what? I don't want this film to be produced by anybody else. We'll produce it. So it became the first production for him and me. And that, I think, for me was very important, in it, to be able to sort of address the issue at a very commercial level of filmmaking, because I've always believed that commercial Hindi cinema is the most powerful platform in our country. It's the most powerful medium. And because I came from documentaries and because I had already gone through what I call the IIC syndrome in Delhi, where 500 people collect every Saturday, watch documentaries, and everybody's on the same ideological page and everybody pats each other on the back and move on. I said mainstream cinema is where it needs to be thrown out, because it'll go to quarters where nobody otherwise will be able to reach. And that's what Salman brings to my project. Would Bajrangi be a successful film without Salman? Of course it would be. Would it become the monster it's become? No. He really helped it to reach every corner of this world. So it's a great ally to have when you're discussing things like, as I said, the border and the borders within. And that's where, if you can utilize stars properly, they're the biggest collaborators and allies that you have.
So one of the things I really loved about Bajrangi Bhaijaan, the first part of it, was how he comes in with a certain mindset, and I'm sure that was their intent. And if you haven't seen the movie, and it's its 10th year, now 10-year anniversary, I saw a few interviews on that, is he comes in with a certain mindset, which is a very obvious mindset, and you would imagine that somebody from that part of the world, with the kind of education or the kind of family he's grown up in, will have that kind of a mindset. The journey of the character as he changes and he transforms, and right towards the end, the transformation journey is complete, is a very important part of the movie. And this is when I ask you, but if you extrapolate that to what's happening in the world today, do you feel that these kind of films where people's ideologies are changed, it seems like we are in an era where ideologies are very fixed. We do not want to reach out. We do not want to, the mental border that you just mentioned, we don't want to break that. I loved what you said about commercial cinema. But if I'm a cynic, which I am sometimes on bad days, do you feel that cinema has that power still to make those kind of changes? Or is it something that we are just saying to feel good because, hey, you need to make films and we need to watch films? There's a whole industry.
I'm not sure whether I would go to the extent to say that cinema can change, but cinema can definitely make you think. And if you can make many people think about something, I think that's worth fighting for. And if you sustain it over several films, then a certain change could probably be brought about. But I wouldn't go to the extent of saying that cinema can change society, but can definitely provoke you to think. And I think that's what Bajrangi did at that point in time. It's actually, if you look at it, it's pretty recent, right? It's just 10 years ago. Certain forces had already started gathering which would actually not be happy with the politics of Bajrangi. I did get certain PILs against me. I remember the VHP put a PIL against me at the Allahabad High Court, saying that the title is blasphemous and I should not be able to use the title Bajrangi and Bhaijaan together. Fortunately, those are still early days. We were able to sort of fight back. It was a high-profile film, and I told them that you'll have to give it to me in writing if you say that I can't use the word, the title Bajrangi Bhaijaan. And I think they kind of realized this guy's going to just take this letter and probably call a press conference and, creates a storm. But today, I don't know. I don't know what kind of battles we would have to fight to make that film. But having said that, if it still gets the kind of love that it continues to get, that at some level, I think people still believe in those values that we're talking about. And despite all kinds of, political winds that go across the country, I think those values is something that people still believe in. And that always gives me hope. Otherwise, it's a film that people would not be appreciated anymore. But it still is one of the most watched films whenever it comes on television and whenever it's, seen on OTT. So that always gives me hope.
Yeah, it's still running on OTT, running on Netflix, I think.
And also, at the end of the day, that's why we make films, right? It's something that maybe we can't do in real life, but we can always hope for and wish for. At the end of the day, Bajrangi is a fairy tale. I know in a real world, the people cannot bring down that border and make that little girl and Bajrangi unite in that no man's land. But then, what else is filmmaking for?
Yes, of course. The art of the possible. So, on the topic of fantasy and wish fulfillment, I'll get into more easier stuff. So, one of the things I loved about Ek Tha Tiger was that it is not the super efficient, super spy movie where the guy does everything and he does it in a very beautiful manner. A lot of these things, a lot of the movie shows a very mundane life that Salman Khan is leading. He wears the shirts, he's saying hello to the neighbors, lives in a nondescript home. And so much of it is also wish fulfillment. Like one of the songs, I think it was Mashallah, which is where there's this whole scenario playing out where he is imagining that there is Katrina who's doing this dance and there's the bagpipers, etc., etc. I love the way that you subvert a lot of the regular conventions about spy movies, and I feel that the spy-verse, YRF spy-verse, they're just becoming more and more efficient, the spies, that they can do anything. But that first movie had a certain innocence to it, which is a lot of it is due to Salman. I mean, Salman has that persona where you think that, oh, Bhai will take care of things, but he is a little bit of a bumbling thing. Now, towards the second half, he kind of becomes that person, and the Cuba scenes are really good, and the songs were so good there. I was wondering if you feel with films, with wish fulfillment especially, how does that play out in your other films? I feel the second half of your career and the films kind of you have made, some of them are real wish fulfillment, like 83, obviously it really happened. But some of the other films that you have made, do you feel that there's a wish fulfillment factor that comes into your movies?
Always. I think at the end of the day, as a filmmaker, I'm also trying to do a wish fulfillment through my own films, right? Whether, as I said, in the context of Bajrangi, I was talking about that. I mean, at least we can do it in our films. At least we can look at the world the way we want the world to be in our films. Even in 83, there is a certain looking at India, which, I mean, a lot of response that I got about 83 was like people said, we miss that India. That you showed in 83. So of course there's a lot of that, and it's important because ultimately that's the way I look at my country, and that's the vision I have for my country. And any filmmaker who's making a film, his or her ideology has to come through in the film. Otherwise, what's the point? So of course, I think wish fulfillment is a huge aspect of the kind of stories I look for. It happened actually. My last film, Chandu Champion, begins with like you started the thing with Murlikant Petkar. Murlikant Petkar is India's first para-Olympian, actually the first gold medal that we got in any form of Olympic. And it's true that he went to the police station and put a case against the President of India for not giving him the Arjuna Award, because he was told at that point in time that people like you don't qualify, because he was a para-Olympian. And the film begins with that. And then 3 months after the film, the President of India announced the Lifetime Arjuna Award for him. And Karthik and I went and sat in Rashtrapati Bhavan. So for me, the film actually came full circle then when I saw him finally get the Arjuna Award that he had always wished for.
Yeah.
So it was, again, a big wish fulfillment.
No, absolutely. I'm going to go into 2 more questions and I'll open it up to the audience. So, sorry, just give me one moment. So one of the things with 83 is, and I want to know how you make a sports film, and I think you mentioned inside in the room there in the green room about Invictus, a movie that you liked, which it was a great movie about a nation kind of coming together. And if you haven't seen it, it's about a Rugby World Cup, about South Africa winning the Rugby World Cup. And this was the first time, and there was Matt Damon plays the captain. His name begins with P. Forgetting him. But in '83, tell us how the movie came through. How did it come up? And now that you mentioned Invictus, I see some similarities in the generally about the destiny of a nation and things like that.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about that.
So a lot of people imagine that I'm this huge cricket fan. Actually, I'm not. I don't watch cricket, right? But because I've made '83, people imagine that I must be this absolute like cricket guru. So when the material for '83 came, and it was just a collection of some internet research that came to me, it was lying there on my table for almost a month. And then I just decided, okay, I was going on a long flight, and I do a lot of work I love long flights because I end up doing a lot of my writing and sort of reading on flights. So I carried it with me, and I read it, and it was not even a story. As I said, it was just a collection of internet research, and at the end of it, I had a lump in my throat. And I said, why did that happen? Then I made my associate Rajan read it, and he started crying. So I said, there's something here, but I said, it cannot be the cricket, because a good sports film is never about the sport. It's about the human spirit. And for me, when I started, when I did a deep dive into '83, I realized '83 is actually the story of coming of age of a nation, which actually, in a certain sense, is completely reflected in that one dialogue that I had with Pankaj Tripathi playing the coach. He comes to, after an encounter at the Lords, he comes to the field, and Kapil sees him upset, and he says, kahan gaye the? So he said, sabak seekhne. So he said, kya sabak? He said, ye ki आज़ादी जीते हुए हमें 35 साल हो गए हैं, लेकिन इज्जत जितना अभी बाकी है कप्तान. Which was what the whole film is about. So I said, yeah, this is an amazing story to tell, and I've often said that you can replace the cricket with kabaddi, the story still remains the same. Of course, it's a great advantage to have Kapil Dev and his team, and have cricket as a sport, which is a religion in India. But and today when I meet people, and a lot of people come and say, I'm not at all interested in cricket, but I love '83. For me, I really feel happy, because that was my aim. I said, I cannot be making this for the cricket fans. It has to reach people who don't really care about cricket, because what has to move you is the way this team felt, the way Kapil sort of really persevered, and at every point, even when people were laughing at him, said, that famous line of his, he says, when they were asked, what are you here for? And he says, what else are we here for? To win the World Cup. So these are those definitive lines for me for '83, and as I said, repeating myself, but it's never about the sport.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the casting. One of the most interesting things in the movie was the cast.
It was, because it was 14 living legends, actually, you have to cast. And initially I said, how am I going to do this? And what really helped me, and what I was very clear about, which is, I remember telling Ranveer also at some point in time, I said, see, we'll make every effort to make all of you look like the players you're representing. But please remember, it's not a look-alike contest. You have to basically get that persona. So, I mean, this is complete, all credit to the boys. Of course, the great advantage was that I was making a film about a team, and all of them were there to help me. So I would just send all the boys to go spend time with the OGs. And Ranveer and I went and shifted in with Kapil Dev for a couple of weeks, and we told him, you go about doing your job, and we'll just be like a fly on the wall. He said, yeah, sure. Like Ranveer Singh will be a fly on the wall. You think my life will be normal. But it was a great exercise, because, whenever I would ask Kapil Dev about a certain match, he would say, yaar, Kabir, itna time ho gaya, kaise yaad rahega? About Tunbridge Wells, where there's no record of Tunbridge Wells, the famous match in which he scored the world record 175 not out. And I said, tell me about that, because there's no record for it. And he said, yaar, main to trance mein tha. I was just like, I have no idea what was happening. And then when I wrote the script, and I went with him with Ranveer, and we started making him read the script, that's when he started suddenly saying, hey, no, this is not the way it happened. This is what I said. This is how it happened. In those 10 days, literally 60% of the script was rewritten. So that was a great advantage, where I could go make all the boys go and spend time with the OGs. And they really worked hard to get the action right. We worked very hard on those aspects. Even to get... So they had no uniforms, right? They were basically, the team used to be told, "Safed kapde pehen ke aa jana." So, Jimmy Amarnath is buying a terracotta pant from somewhere. Shrikant is getting Malmal ka shirt from Chennai. Roger Binney has this weird shirt where every time he bowls, his sleeves unfold. And then he walks back folding his sleeve. It's iconic. Every time he bowls, and then he goes back folding his sleeve. Again he bowls, again it unfolds. And there's documentary proof of this on YouTube. You can see that. I said, how do I get a shirt to act like this? Like, do I do a VFX shirt? So my costume department tested 20 different fabrics with varying degrees of machine wash till finally we found that one fabric that behaves like that. That's the level of detailing we had to get into.
Documentary filmmaking is much easier. Last question. So as I watch your films, and I watched a bunch of them at the same time, so maybe that's why it's stuck to me. A theme that I notice is I see a young person, maybe a little bit directionless, maybe floating, as they say, who gets mentored or guided by somebody older than him. Usually it's a him. So there is Girish Karnad in Ek Tha Tiger. There is even Irfan Khan in New York to the Neil Nitin Mukesh character. There's Om Puri in both Tube Light and Bajrangi Bhaijaan. There is Sabyasachi Chakraborty in Phantom. There is Pankaj Tripathi as P.R. Mansingh that you just said. Even Vijay Raz as the coach in Chandu Champion. Is that something that has some source in your
I
own
didn't
life?
even realize this. Wow. No, if it's happened, it's inadvertent. It's definitely not something that I've thought through.
With that, I'll open it up. We'll have a therapy session later, but we'll open it up to questions. Thank you. I think we are going to be using one of these mics. And again, just to remind you, short, crisp, so that you can get many questions in. And the question should be about the movie, about the work, not so much about yourself. Thank you.
Hello, Kabir. I'm so happy that we discussed 83 movie here because it is a movie that must be discussed in great detail. And there are 3 points that I actually wanted to talk about. One is casting of Jeeva as Shrikant. You cast a real South Indian, a Tamil actor for the role of Shrikant. Actually, I admire you for that because we have movies made out of, Param Sundari, Chennai Express, where like half of the actors are on coconut trees. And I feel, oh my God, this one character. We are so. I mean, I'm coming from Kerala, and I was so much happy seeing Shrikant in that movie. I mean, Shrikant's character being played by
Jeeva
Jeeva.
is what a fabulous job it is.
Yes,
Yeah.
the dialogues, it's all so authentic. I don't know how much have been translated into subtitles, but I mean, it is something to be appreciated about. And also, there is a scene where you show the West Indies team, and it is very easy to demonize the other team, but you haven't done that. You have given a fantastic entry scene for Vivian Richard and his team. It is not something that we see in, movies, like, even political movies. We demonize, villainize the opposite team. We haven't done that. And also, there is a scene where you show Pakistani army telling that they'll cease the firing for
They stopped firing for the finals. They said,
for the
watch
final,
the match.
yes. And my friend, we are watching this movie. I watched this movie twice in the theater because it was the first Indian movie that I watched here after coming from India. And that was, I was really homesick and it will be a landmark movie for me. So my friend was asking, is it really realistic that, Pak team did that? And I was like, I don't know. The film maker had an opportunity to spread hatred or love, but he chose to spread love, and you will have my admiration for that. So,
Thank you so much.
yes, my question was this. So, as you said it's sorry. I'm really sorry. I had to say this because this is not discussed in detail, and I wanted you to know from all these things. You said the corporates have come in. It's a corporate project now. What are the hurdles that a filmmaker has to cross now? You cannot upset institutions, you cannot upset religions, you cannot upset so many things right now, right? So how has a process become now? Like, how difficult is it now?
So just aside for the Jiva thing, it's very interesting that when I went to Jiva, Jiva knew I make Hindi films, right? So I said, Jiva, I want to offer you a very interesting role. The first thing he said is, I said, Shrikant, and I want you to play him in 83. Jiva's a mad cricket fanatic. He loves playing cricket. So he was like, for him, Shrikant is like God. So he said, wow. So, but one of the first thing he said is, he said, but sir, I don't speak Hindi. I said, neither does Shrikant. You speak exactly the way Shrikant speaks. So yeah, but that was something we were very aware of. There has to be a representation of, you know, the way all these players was. So to answer your question, see, I mean, over the ages, filmmakers have lived in different times, different political conditions, different situations. It's ultimately, you can't compromise what you want to say. You have to believe in the ideology that you're born with, I mean, what you have, and the point that you want to put across. You just have to probably change the way you say it, so that it becomes maybe non-confrontational. It's like Bajrangi, classic, right? Bajrangi is an extremely political film, but at face value, it's an entertainer which anybody can watch and enjoy it without necessarily getting into the politics beneath. But if you do get into the politics beneath, you'll just find the film that much more profound and that much more interesting. It's like that. It's the song, the chicken song. Chicken song in Bajrangi is the most popular song for children, right? They all love it, the beat, the way it's the most political song of the film because it came in the wake of the beef ban. And basically what the song says is, this is Chaudhary Dhaba. Half of it is vegetarian, half of it is non-vegetarian. You choose what you want to eat and where you want to sit. So that's what you have to do in mainstream cinema. You have to just figure out the way to say it, where it doesn't become confrontationist, but yet you sort of put your point across. I got heavily attacked for that scene where the Pakistani army says that today we won't fire, please enjoy the final match, because they also wanted to watch it. And that's not something I could ever verify. I'd heard this through somebody in the army. There was no way of verifying it, but I said, doesn't matter. I'll still want to show it because it also shows it's a salute to your team. Right? So I said, yeah, why not? I will definitely show it. And I'm so glad you sort of appreciated that.
Another border-related scene in your
Again, another border. The border always.
Hi, Kabir. Honored to have you here and listen to you live. Big fan of your work, and especially with the documentary, work that you've done. If I were to summarize your work, what it means to me personally and to many is like, there is this quote, right, that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite of it. So whether it's the VHP thing or a film about post-9/11 effects, or Chicken, the song that you mentioned about beef ban, so these things can feel a little fearful on the surface. And what I like most is you act despite of them that, and we all feel, wow, Kabir Khan can do this. Can you tell us about what your inner process as a filmmaker, as an artist, as a writer, in these initial few weeks or months go? What do you go through before you take that first step? Despite taking a step in the direction of something which we consider to be, quote unquote, fearful.
I think it's just, once a story gets into my head, then I'll move a mountain to make it. So once I find a story and I sort of get enthused by it, then it's like, I'll do everything possible to try and sort of put it out. And if I know I'm going to be coming across hurdles and people will attack me for that, I will find ways to sort of maneuver that. And yeah, I mean, you can't be afraid. I mean, if you've chosen to be in the public space to tell stories, if you're going to be afraid to tell your stories, then you're not in the right field. That you cannot be. You have to have the courage to be able to push through. And for me, it comes from also, as I said, the fact that I want to tell it in the mainstream. I don't want to sort of go and tell it to a limited audience. I want to be able to, because mainstream, there's a very interesting incident. Mainstream Indian cinema has actually saved my life. And I remember that's the day this happened in Afghanistan when I was shooting a documentary. This was in 2001, post 9/11, I was trying to get into Afghanistan. This is the experience of which Kabul Express is based. And I was trying to get into it, and it was becoming impossible because we were in Tajikistan and we were trying to enter, and there were landslides and there was avalanches. And for 14 days, it was stuck trying to enter Kabul. And finally, on the 14th day, we decided, okay, we'll give it one more shot. If it doesn't work out, we'll just, cancel it and go back to Delhi. And that day, we saw this Russian helicopter being loaded with medical supplies going into Kabul. And we took the Russian pilot aside and did our Indian jugaad and basically gave him $2,000. And he said, okay, come into my chopper. And it took off. And it's from Dushanbe, it's like 40 minutes through the Hindu Kush mountains to Kabul. And suddenly, just before Kabul, he brings the chopper down, hovering about 20 feet above the ground, and says, jump. I said, jump? The hell? $2,000. He says, no, but you contraband. I can't take you to the military base. You're not supposed to be in this thing. And if I bring the chopper down, then some technical jargon about taking 20 minutes to reboot and, go up, I'll be off the radar. So literally we had to hang from the chopper, and it's way higher than John and Arshad did in Kabul Express. We jumped and this chopper takes off, and then we're in the middle of nowhere. 360 degrees are just snow-capped mountains. I don't know where Kabul is. And then I see this one lone figure walking towards us with a Kalashnikov in his hand. He's just seen these two guys jump off a Russian helicopter, and he's looking really angry, this Mujahideen. And I thought this is it. This is the way my life, my end has been written. I'll be shot here. Nobody will know, because nobody knows I boarded that chopper. I'll be frozen forever in the mountains of Afghanistan. And all I knew is that he has this, the Mujahideen have this great affinity for India and warmth towards India. So I kept saying, Hindustan, Hindustan. And he must have been 6 feet 4 inches tall, this guy. And he comes close and I'm saying, Hindustan. And suddenly he stops and he starts singing, Mere Sapno Ki Rani Kab Aayegi Tu. That day I realized the power of mainstream Bollywood. I said, Bhaiya, kahani sunani hai to mainstream cinema mein sunani hai. And I went back and started writing my first film, which is Kabul Express, which has this scene which I had to change, because when I wrote this scene, my friend said, this is a ridiculous scene. Nobody's going to buy this. So I had to change it, and I made, instead of singing, he says, Amitabh Bachchan and all that. I wish I had not changed it. But yeah, so ever since then, I've just said, that's the platform I want to tell my stories on, and fight for it.
Hi, Kabir. Please tell me, what is your daily writing routine or reading routine?
Torturous.
Or editing? Please tell me, give me the juice.
Writing is actually the toughest part of filmmaking. It's a lonely process. You're just sitting and writing. I became a writer by default. I wrote my first script because I didn't have money to pay writers. So I said, I'll write till the point I get a producer, and then I'll ask the producer to pay for a writer. And that first meeting that I was talking about with Aditya Chopra, the first thing I told him, I said, Adi, can we get a writer? He says, for what? So I said, to write the script. He said, I want you to make exactly what you've written. So I said, oh, that's how I became a writer. And then subsequently I realized that I will have to write all my screenplays. My dream is that somebody gives me a screenplay, I read it and I say, this is my next film. It's my dream. But it hasn't happened till now. So I always write my own screenplays. But I'm open to story ideas from people, from newspaper articles. And like Chandu Champion is actually an old article. There's a lot of research that I do, even if it's a fictional story. In the real stories, of course, there's a lot. In like 83, there was 2 years of research before I could start writing the screenplay. And there was nothing documented in India. I think we have such an oral culture. Beta मतलब बाप बेटे को बोलता है, वो अपने बेटे को बोलता है. Nothing is documented. Even the 3-4 journalists who had gone to London to write did not have copies of their articles. I finally found the copies in the Lord's archives in London. So it took me 2 years of just traveling, meeting people, getting eyewitness accounts of what was happening at that point in time in England and in India when the matches were going on. So it's a long drawn research process followed by screenwriting, which is torturous, but I think that's where the film happens.
Kabir, thank you for speaking with us. I was curious to hear your perspective a little bit on the history of Indian cinema. NFDC has made so many amazing films, but what do you think is the reason that none of them really became mainstream and the masses didn't really appreciate them in large numbers?
Were you referring to which films?
NFDC.
The parallel cinema movement of the NFDC produced so many.
It's, I don't think there can be a more different and varied audience in the world than the Indian audience. Just imagine difference in languages and cultures, economics. It's a very difficult audience to try and capture as a whole, right? These so-called pan-Indian films did happen when there used to be these single screens, you know, about 200-300 of them, and so you had to make a certain kind of cinema with these big stars. The days of Amitabh Bachchan, right, which sort of worked around the country, except the South worked in the rest of the country. Today there's a lot of segmentation, and at the time when NFDC was happening, I think the positioning of those films also, they didn't have marketing muscle. I think the concept of marketing those films was absent. So they would get made, but no, the masses would just not get to know about those films. And of course there was this whole sort of a barrier which said, oh, these are those art house cinema. No, they were not art, they were called art movement films, so they would be boring. You know, they don't have stars. But that's not true. Some of them were really entertaining films. But they never reached out because there were barely 200-300 screens, which would always get occupied by your, you know, Mr. Bachchan's films or the other big stars' films. So they would be left to then be showing in Vigyan Bhavan, IIC, and therefore they were never able to Pragati Maidan. They were never able to penetrate and reach out to the audiences. I think that was a sad aspect of, which is a problem which we still suffer with. We still have a huge shortage of screens in our country. Imagine a film crazy country like this, with the largest population in the world, we at best, the biggest Hindi film can access 5,000 screens. China has 120,000. US has 35,000 with, you know, a quarter of the population.
And in fact, you could even make that case for documentary films.
Documentary films, one of the reasons why I actually, apart from the fact that it saved my life, one of the reasons why I shifted from documentaries to mainstream cinema is because I realized that I was at that, those are the times when there was no YouTube, no internet, right? So my documentary films were being bought by these international networks and they were going to festivals, but there was no interaction with the audience, you know, and for any communicator, you need that feedback. You need to be able to discuss your work. And that's the reason why I decided to shift towards cinema, the larger screen.
Yeah, I mean, even now with the great documentary films being made by India, it's very hard to watch them. I mean, hard to watch them as in to find a medium to watch it on.
Hi, Mr. Kabir Khan. Absolute honor to have to listen to you. It's a beautiful story and journey. I have a two-part question. The first part being that, as Mr. Purkayastha said, when you touch on a subject that becomes so relevant in the future, so what is that new subject that's on your mind right now? And we'd all like to know about it. And the second part of the question is, you are such a handsome man, and you have such an impressive personality. Have you ever thought of acting in your own movies? And I think we'd all love to see him, right?
Thank you so much. Well, actually, to answer your second question first, I think I missed the opportunity. Well, I was in film, so I'm from the same film school as I just mentioned, where Kiran and I are both from, but our most illustrious alumni is Mr. Shah Rukh Khan. So, and I'm 3 batches junior to Shah Rukh, and in fact I studied from his notes because Gauri was a close friend of mine. And so about when Shah Rukh started making waves in Bollywood, suddenly people heard of our film school, like MCRC Jamia, and they imagined that they train actors. And so this one gentleman landed up to MCRC, and he went to the director of the institute and he said, you know, I'm looking for actors. So the director was confused because MCRC trains filmmakers, not actors. So he said, Acha, he thought for a bit and he said, there's this boy, Kabir Khan, you can meet him. So Khan to aise usne bola, chalo, half the battle is won. Shah Rukh Khan ke baad ek Khan aur mil jayega. So he came and he met me and he said, I want you to act in a film. So I said, wow, okay, great. So he said, come to Bombay. I said, no, I still have a year left. So I'll finish my course and then come to Bombay. He said, no, we have to start in the next 3 months. So I'm saying, I know, I need to finish this course. And he got pretty offended. And to further sort of aggravate the case, I didn't know his name, right? Studying in film school, you're still in the sort of, la la land of Truffaut and Godard. Where are you going to know the names of? So as he was walking, I said, what's your name, sir? So he turned around in a very filmy way and he said, actually I can mention him because I joked about him later. I said, Farooq Nadiadwala. Bombay mein kisi se pooch lena, bata denge. So I think that's where I missed the boat, unfortunately. डायरेक्टर्स की लाइफ, हम तो मजदूर लोग हैं, एक्टर ही बनना चाहिए था. But I'm sorry, I forgot your first question. Next project, unfortunately, I'm about to announce it, so I can't divulge any details. Again, it's a true story. I've become obsessed with true stories. So yeah, it's going to start soon.
But one quick point about the Nadia connection. But you did make Phantom for him, right?
For Sajid,
For Sajid.
his nephew. So I asked Sajid, I said, who was this gentleman? He said, हाँ मेरे चचा हैं लेकिन. I said, वो picture बनी या नहीं बनी? So he said, हाँ बनी लेकिन बहुत बड़ी flop हो गई थी.
Interesting. The tagline for Phantom is a story you wish were true.
Hi, Kabir.
Hi.
So, a couple of quick questions. One is about 83. He mentioned Invictus. I know Kiran is sitting here too. She was involved in Lagan. Do you think in the making of the movie, were there any creative choices where you start thinking about like which audience you're making it for? Because it seems like Invictus, Lagan appeal to a lot of sort of mainstream American audiences. 83 was more sort of focused on the Indian audiences. And then the second one is I actually have a script that's going to get banned in India. So how do you go
Please
about
don't
making
send it to
movies?
me.
Exactly. So how do you go about making movies like that given the current situation in India?
I usually don't start making films that I know are going to get banned. No, but to answer your first question, I don't think you can ever engineer a film for an audience. You can never start making a film saying, I'm making it for this audience, because you don't know that audience. The only audience you know is yourself. So I think every filmmaker ultimately makes a film for himself or herself. And, I think as filmmakers, we feel we are pretty, regular, middle of the line, balanced people. And if this appeals to us, then it'll probably appeal to a larger audience also. But that's the only way I think you can make a film. You have to, I definitely try and make the films that I like to watch. I don't make films that okay, I don't like them, but I think those people will like it, so let me make it. The moment you do that, you've lost even the only audience you know, maybe because you're also not going to like it, and chances are the others are also not going to like it.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I'm an American-born Indian kid, and so New York had a big impact on me when it came out, really reshaped how I saw this country. I would love to hear a little bit about what motivated you to make that, and if you had the opportunity to speak to any folks who were unjustly detained and how that might have shifted your perspective in the making of that film. Thank you for making that film. It was very important.
Thank you so much. So New York is my second film. I had still been doing research on some documentaries, and the research on the illegal detentions was part of a documentary project that I was working on. And around that time, Adi gave me a story idea, and it was in the world of the underworld. And it was a story of these three friends, and it didn't quite click with me. So I said, no, Adi, I don't think I sort of would like to do that. And I kept thinking of the idea he told me about these three friends. And I said, what if I place them against the backdrop of the illegal detentions that took place? And I went back to Adi and I said, would you like to do something like this? And he said, oh my God, this sounds too political. And that too about another country. I said, yeah, but it's 9/11. I mean, can we say that 9/11 didn't affect us? It did. So why don't we do that? So he thought for a bit, and he said this is the sign of a solid producer. I think a producer who can really empower you. And, he thought about it for a bit, and he said, Kabir, I'm pretty apolitical, but in Kabul Express, you allowed me to understand the politics as and when I needed to understand them as an audience. If you can do that in New York, go for it. And he gave me the platform. New York is not a cheap film. It's a film which was shot entirely. At that point in time, it was the single longest schedule of any Hindi film abroad. It was 100 days we were in New York and Philadelphia. And that's how it came about. And then, strangely, it became a huge commercial success. And a lot of people in Bollywood started calling me and say, can you make another New York type film for us? So I didn't know what that meant, but yeah, it subsequently opened up a lot of doors for me. And I'm so glad it resonated so deeply across the world, because it became the opening film at the Cairo Film Festival 2 months after release. And the opening film is usually never a released film. And when I went there, the kind of response it got, because they said that this is a film we should have made, the Arabs should have made, and it's actually come from the Indian film industry. So it was, yeah. So New York went on to become a very important sort of landmark film for me. Coming into the industry as a documentary filmmaker, being able to carry my documentary research in, and then actually mount it as a mainstream film.
So I think we have time for one more question. Last question. Yeah. No pressure. But you have to give it a good ending. Don't make it like my last question. The question is longer than the answer.
The mic is on. Thank you. I want to start by saying huge fan of 83. I forced my American-born kids to come to the theater with me and shout every time I shouted. I took a whistle. I went and saw it alone first time, and the second time I made it like how people do it in India theaters, because I insisted that's how they should enjoy cricket. So thank you for that. I do have a pet peeve, not just with your movies, but I was told to talk only about your movies, not about anybody else's. So I'm going to tie it to 83. So why do filmmakers in India take on talent like Deepika, for example, and give her a minuscule, or I'm talking in general, why do they take in women actresses of a certain caliber, give them roles that are really minuscule and not really, a big part in the movie? And I see that more and more in previous movies. We have seen women-oriented movies. We don't see that anymore, and we see big actresses with good names, good portfolio, not getting really deep roles. Is that something that the Indian audiences have shown preference for? Is that why it's happening? What is it that's going on there?
So, speaking in the context of Deepika, there's no way you can take a star the stature of Deepika and say, I'm going to give you a 2-bit role. You have to remember, Deepika Padukone is one of the producers of 83. So she chose to do that role of Romi Dev, because she felt, when I narrated the film to her as a producer, she said that, I would love to play the role of Romi Dev, because I feel it's a very strong role, and it has a very short duration on screen, but it has a very because actually what prompted her to play Romi Dev was she met Kapil Dev and Romi, and she saw the position that Romi has in Kapil's life, and she said, I'd love to be able to reflect that. But I think to the contrary, now the big women stars are definitely getting these big roles which are mounted for them. The films are being made for them. Today you cannot take a Deepika Padukone, Alia Bhatt, Priyanka Chopra, or these big stars and say, I want you to do a small irrelevant role. They're not going to do it. So yes, some newcomers you might be able to do that with, and there are films that I have seen. I can't comment on their reasons, but I have seen where they've taken some newcomers and given them some irrelevant roles. But with the big stars, that's not the case today.
With that, our evening comes to a close.
Thank you so much. That was very enjoyable.
We'll be here again tomorrow morning. But I was just thinking, one last thing. Selfie lele? We need you all in the background, because it needs to be convincing.